Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody is ready. And I'm here with my buddy Aaron. Aaron, are you on the line too?
I'm here with you, Andre.
Hey, good. So I wanted to make sure everybody was in. So it looks like we've got close to 40 people in the group, and want to go through a couple of housekeeping things with you. And let's see how we're going to do that. Aaron, Aaron's also a co-host here. So Aaron, if you want to keep an eye on people coming in, you can admit them as you can. And let's just go through a couple of housekeeping things, guys. So thanks everybody for spending the afternoon with us. And what I want to do is make sure that we're able to answer as many questions as possible. So um, there are a few things that we want to make sure that everybody knows. First of all, Aaron from Patterson, Michigan is co-hosting with me, and he is on the line, and he's going to be able to facilitate some questions and answers. So he will admit people into the group. He's going to keep an eye on the chat box. So if you have questions, he's going to see those, and there is a process at the bottom of your screen in order to, if you want to raise your hand, if you have a question, if you want to put a thumbs up, you guys can just keep asking questions and want to try to cover as much as possible. So let's go through and see what's what. So top of your screen, if you click on the where the green bar is, there is on the far right a view option. If you go to side by side mode, you'll see a better view of the screen. So you'll be able to see the host. You'll see some of your fellow fielders, but you will be able to see a little bit more information on the screen there. So go into side by side mode. That would be the best way to see this video. The other thing that I'm going to tell you is at the bottom of your screen, there is an unmute icon and there's a chat icon. The chat icon is the best way to get your question out there so that Aaron and I can see it. If you have a question, you need to unmute yourself, hit the unmute button and go ahead and yell out a question if you want. But for the most part, we'll keep everybody muted so that we don't have to hear any dogs in the background or like for me this morning, I had a webinar and the landscaper came through. So all you heard was leaf blowers. So hopefully that'll help. If anybody has any questions, bring them up and let us know what you have. So what I want to do is typically when I go through one of these Eaglesoft Field Guide live events, what we're doing is actually trying to do Q&A. We're going to go through some topics. So what I want to start with is going through a few things where there were some questions that came in, go through a few things first, and then come back and bring up a live Eaglesoft screen and we'll do some Q&A that way. So hopefully that's a good way to do this. So for those who don't know, back 100 years ago when I worked in a dental office, I worked in an office where we went from paper to DOS-based computers to Unix-based computers to Eaglesoft. And when we went to Eaglesoft, we were one of the first users. We were in the first group of users. This was a long time ago. And I learned how to use Eaglesoft by just doing. A lot of it was just trial and error. But back then, you were able to call into the PTC and actually talk to the guys who were the programmers of the computer. So the first string of people who used the software. But that was a long time ago. I mean, it was great. But over time, as I learned to manage the practice, I took on more of a managerial role, like anybody who would work at the front desk would do. You take on a more management role. And the person I worked for was my brother-in-law. And one day, as I got to the office, this was May of 1989, I get to the office, and as normal, I was the first person at the office every day. And when I got there, there was a sticker on the door. And that sticker, we're all used to seeing that. We get to the office, there's a sticker on the door. It's typically, FedEx dropped off a package. But what it really was not a FedEx sticker, but it was a notice from the city of Philadelphia that we were closed, that they had seized the office because my brother-in-law had never paid taxes. So I went from being the manager to now being the owner, because what I had to do was actually pay the back taxes in order to get the office back from the city of Philadelphia. So now I became the de facto owner of the practice. So the stakes became a whole lot higher. The way that I ran the practice, the way that I worked in the practice, it was a different mindset. So it really made a difference in the way that I now held the keys to the practice. And I had my brother-in-law become just a worker in the office. And it became a real struggle to make sure that I was doing things the right way in order to make the processes happen so that we got paid, so that we were able to pay back the debt that he owed me, and so that we were able to have a functioning dental practice. So I say that to let you know that I did all that until 2002, where I retired from doing practice management consulting, from doing all the things that I did in dentistry. And from 2002 until 2005, I kind of didn't do anything except for sit around my house and hang out with my cat and create other companies. And those companies were Crew, StatCheck, Dental Life, and Practice Par. And what those companies did was were Crew was a team building company. StatCheck was a non-surgical periodontal program. Dental Life was actually back in 2002, believe it or not, was a online dental education company. Pretty much what we're doing now, but this was the beginning of the internet. And then Practice Par was the tool that we used in order to do evaluations of practices. So I did that for pretty much 3 years and stayed out of going into dental offices. But in 2005, actually on Independence Day, I decided to go work for Patterson Dental. And I did that because I had a long-standing relationship with Patterson. I was one of the recommended consultants for Patterson. And I did a lot of training for them. Back then, we had Patterson at independent trainers. So I actually did a lot of training for Patterson as an independent trainer. And it was a blast actually going through the process of getting people using the software the way I did. But July 4th, Independence Day 2016, I retired again from working for Patterson. And now I shouldn't say all I do, but what I do now is I travel the country teaching people processes. And now that we have this COVID outbreak, I'm not traveling that much anymore. But what I want to go through with you guys is the processes that we're going to be using to utilize Eaglesoft better. I use this example all the time, and I always give credit to my 5th grade science teacher, and I remember it very well. When we started the class, she said, it rains, and then we get water out of the fountain. Now, what happens in between those periods is what I'm going to teach you. And that was the beginning of my teaching people how to do processes. I learned that from her, and I give her all credit for that. But what we're going to talk about is processes. And with the COVID-19 crisis, we actually have new processes that we have to put in place. And think about this. Patients confirm information over the internet. They log into our portals, especially if you're using RevenueWell. They log in, they fill out their information, they drive to the practice. They sit in their car, they text us or they call us that they're there. We check them in and confirm that they're there. If you do, we take a payment online at that point, prepay for the services. They come into the practice, we do dental treatment, we schedule the next visit, we check them out again, they leave, they get back in their car, they go back home, and then the process starts all over again. And what I want you guys to do is I need you guys to sit at your practices and work this process out. I mean, this is a good, easy way. And, the easiest way is just to write these symbols on like 3x5 cards, lay it out on the table and see if this works properly for you and find out where you need to integrate Eaglesoft into each of these steps. And where are the gaps? If Eaglesoft can't do the check-in process, what other tools do you have? What third-party products do you have, like a RevenueWell, in order to be able to do that? So, and if you need to change around the process, so be it. If you schedule the next visit first and take the payment after services, whatever you need to do in order to make this happen is what you need to work on. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is talk about a lot of the processes, and how I can help you with those processes. So I always start with looking at processes this way. And you've probably seen this in other presentations, but there are 3 ways that we work in your practice. And those 3 ways are portals into the practice. All right. And I think about portals in a practice like this: the 3 types of patients that we're going to have in our practice. All right. The first type, which is the standard type of patient, is the patient who needs to be recalled. They get their needed treatment and they pay their copays. So that's the typical patient. They have insurance, they pay their co-payments. They're not going to prepay for treatment. They get the treatment that you suggest, but they're not coming in looking for veneers. All right. And then they do recalls as needed. All right. But that's the typical patient. That's sort of 80% of our patient base in most of the practices that I go into. All right. Then we have the group of patients who they're scheduled ahead of time. All right. They're great. They show up 10 minutes early, typically. All right. They get the treatment that you recommend, even if you told them that you have to do implants at every tooth. I mean, they just do what you tell them to do, and they pay their bills. I mean, that's the great door. That green door is the great door. And then we have that group of people who ignore the recalls. They break appointments. They transfer treatment. All right. They're the people who come back from Florida and they already have veneers because they thought you didn't do them. All right. And they're 90 days old in their accounts receivable. All right. But let me ask you guys this question. And Aaron, you could probably take a look and see if anybody responds. At the bottom of the screen, there's a reaction button. If you guys want to put your hand up, if you are used to seeing your efforts going more towards the red door instead of to the green door. And if you think about it, all the times that we've worked on those people who, we're chasing them because they broke their appointment. We're chasing them because they have overdue balances. We're chasing them because they ignore their recalls. All right. That's where we're spending so much of our time, where we really should be spending our time trying to get more of those green patients or catering to the middle of the road, those people in the middle who are bread and butter. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is make sure that we're taking care of these people. Because I can tell you, if I walk into your practice today, there's probably somebody whose name is Dave. It usually works out that way. His name is Dave. He's scheduled at 4:45 or 5 o'clock on a Friday. And somebody scheduled him there because they know Dave's not going to show up. And we schedule him there because if he doesn't show up, we get to leave early. But that's not the way we run our business. We can't base our businesses on Dave's. So we got to figure out a better way to do this. All right. Because I know, and you guys know it too, if I walk into your practice and look through your schedule, there's at least one patient that you're going to say to me, I know they're not going to show up. All right. But why do we schedule them? Why do we even bother with them? All right. We need to shut that door and move them out of our practice. So as usual, I start with my 4 squares, and we're going to talk about this process. We're going to talk about the process we go through in order to get patients in. We're going to talk about the process we're going to go through as we handle patients going through this COVID crisis. I want to talk about processes. And the processes always start with people and profitability. So we have to figure out how to make this work within the confines of people, processes, and profitability. All right. The last part of that is philosophy, because if we start from philosophy, we hire the right people, we pick the right processes, and we are profitable in what we do. So as long as we start from these 4 pillars, then we can work backwards on everything else we're going to do, and we can set up Eaglesoft properly. So people are put in properly, processes are put in properly, money is put in properly, and as long as it all goes back to philosophy. Got it? So let's start from there. Use McDonald's as my favorite metaphor for these 4 squares, because McDonald's has people, processes, and profitability. We know that. All right. If you look at Burger King has people, processes, and profitability. We know these things. All right. Here's my favorite, Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A has people, processes, and profitability. But guess what? They've got the same exact employee pool, but they tend to have better people because they have better processes, which means ultimately they have better profitability. If you look at the lines at a Chick-fil-A, it's ridiculous. It's just a chicken sandwich. All right. But if they've put these things in place because of their philosophy, everything else trickles down to this idea. All right. So now let's go back to our processes. If we start from philosophy, we get the right people, we get the right processes, right? And if we do that, then we get the patients who show up, we get them into the operatory, we do the services, we collect the money, and we have profitability. All right. So you see how it all works out. I mean, it's simplistic, but this is the kind of thing that we want to make sure that if we do this within Eaglesoft, it all kind of works out. So let's go back to the simplistic processes, what happens in Eaglesoft. All right. So once the patient leaves, we want to make sure that they come back. So we want to make sure our reactivation and recall processes are set up properly. All right. So I like this. Patient shows up at the practice. All right. They check in. So, they call into the office. And if anybody's now using Patient Pop, I love this system now. So they call into the office and they let you know, hey, I'm sitting in the parking lot. I'm all ready to come in, and we tell them what they need to do. Whatever your protocols are going to be going forward, we tell them what our protocols are. You come in, you go to the bathroom, you rinse, you wash your hands, you put on a mask, whatever your processes are, you've got to make sure you step those things out and lay them all out. All right. But you should have a process in place. So they call from the parking lot. They tell you they're here. All right. You check them in. All right. All right. Oh, and if you guys didn't know this, well, you probably don't know this because this just started, but a couple of weeks ago, Aaron and I did a webinar with RevenueWell. And since then, RevenueWell has given me some fun things to be able to give away. And that's why I love those guys. RevenueWell actually gave me the ability that anybody who does not have RevenueWell, if you're interested in forms and you're interested in having a solution like RevenueWell, you can get it for free for 30 days on me and RevenueWell. So 30 days for free for RevenueWells plus forms. All right. If you already have RevenueWell and you want forms for free for 30 days, all right, either way. So if you don't have RevenueWell and you want to get RevenueWell and RevenueWell forms, all right, so to be paperless, for the next 30 days, it's on me and it's on RevenueWell. And all you have to do is when you call in to RevenueWell, just give them the code Andre30 and you'll be able to get RevenueWell and forms if you don't already have RevenueWell. Or if you just have RevenueWell and you want to get forms, you can get either one for free for 30 days as long as you use the code Andre30. Just tell them you were on a webinar with me and just say you remember the code is Andre30. That's all you need to do. All right. So let's talk about this process. You call the patient from the car. All right. You tell the patient to come in. And of course, they're going to come in. This is my new look. They come into the practice and you're telling them, okay, you have to put on a mask. So they mask up. Somebody comes from the back to get them. And now they are taken to the back. All right. Simple process, but we have to lay it out. They go to the operatory, and now we're going to go through the process of whatever you guys are doing in the operatory. I'm not going to go through your clinical processes. That's your deal. All right. But what I want to talk about is how it affects Eaglesoft. And in Eaglesoft, we want to go through a 6-step walkout process. All right. And I go through this all the time. There's a bunch of posts about this in the Facebook group, but I want to go step by step through this process so you understand what a 6-step walkout should look like. So the first step is the clinical crew, the people in the back, all right, open up the chart and they post services to walkout. All right, let's go through that. All right, open up the chart. All right, and as you can see at the bottom, I have an evaluation, I have my bite wings, and I have my cleaning listed as services to be done today. All right, what the back office is supposed to do is they highlight each of the services. All right, they right click on them and they post to walkout. All right, right click, post to walkout. If you've got a single service on a tooth, it's easier. All you have to do is right click on the tooth and post it to walkout. All right. The last step of this is to make sure that you're saving it. All right. So even if you haven't written your notes yet, make sure that you are saving the walkout so that when the patient gets to the front office and they get ready to walk the patient out, there's something there. I see this a lot of times where people will post a walkout and then they'll go writing their notes up. Patient gets to the front office and guess what? There's nothing in the queue because they haven't hit save yet. So make sure that you are hitting the save button before you do anything else. Make sure you hit save before you start writing your notes. Make sure you hit save before you write a lab slip, whatever. If the patient is done in the operatory and ready to go to the front desk, make sure that you are hitting save. All right. Now, what's going to happen at the front office? The front office will open up the account window. All right. Now, everybody's going to say, well, that's not the way I do it. Okay. That's not the way you do it, but that's the way I'm going to suggest that you do it in order to be able to do a proper walkout. All right. To do a proper walkout, you're going to have to make sure that you are opening up the account screen. All right. All right. And see, there's a guy up there on the toolbar, and it is the fast walkout. I have mine looking like a devil because I don't want anybody to use fast walkout. All right. Fast walkout is the cause for a lot of evils in the practice. There are a lot of undistributed credits. There are a lot of other issues with providers not being paid properly because of that fast walkout. That's why I'm telling you, if you're going to work with any of the offices I work with, you're going to go into the account screen. And the account screen does a lot for us, because once I open up my account screen, I can look around the screen and I can tell a lot about what's going on with my patient. So I can look at the top and look at the balances. I can look at, all right, so right there, I can see if there's any current balances, if there's still an open claim under the insurance. I can look at what they're due to pay me before I do a new walkout. So I can immediately see if there's any history that I need to read through. I can look through the entire account ledger to see if there's anything that I need to take care of, as far as, are there notes in there that let me know that the patient has changed insurance, and that's why we've got a delay in claims. Whatever it is, I can see that because I'm looking at history before I'm starting to add new information to the chart. So I'm going to go from my account screen, all right, to walkout. And from the walkout tab, I'm now actually processing the next steps. So now I'm actually entering new information. So the minute I hit my walkout tab, I'm going to get a pop-up, all right, for the services that the patient has in a treatment plan. All right. Now notice something. I've got the evaluation checked, and I have the cleaning checked, because how many times has there been a patient who in the back, they're scheduled for an exam, 4 bite wings prophy, and they say, oh, I don't want to have the x-rays taken. I'm going through chemo. I just found out I'm pregnant, whatever it is, whatever the reason might be, but they might not want to have x-rays taken. All right. So what we're going to tell them is, that's fine. Not a problem. We're just going to post to walk out the exam and the prophy. Now they get to the front, and even though they were scheduled for an exam, 4 bite wings prophy, the only thing that's going to show up as a check when we go to walkout are the 2 things that they actually had done. That's the difference between utilizing this format and utilizing fast walkout. If I used fast walkout, it would automatically walk out the exam, 4 bite wings and prophy as scheduled, because that was originally what the patient was scheduled for. It's going to ignore what I posted to walkout. It's only going to walk out what the patient had scheduled. So this is, again, my fail safe. I make sure that everything works out exactly the way I did. And how do I know that those are only the 2 services that were done? The next step. All right. The next step is we have to have a conversation. So I would say, as a front desk person, I would say, Sally, hygienist, okay, it looks like Andre had an exam and just a cleaning. And Sally would say, that's right, he's going through chemotherapy or whatever it is, and he didn't want to take the x-rays today. We're going to keep that on his treatment plan for the next visit, whatever you guys do. But there needs to be a really clean, well-crafted handoff that happens at the front desk, so that the back office and the front office are really clear on what happened in the back. So just want to let you know, Mrs. Jones had, instead of her 4 bite wings, today we took a full series so that we could follow up on her care. It's been 5 years since she had her last FMX. Whatever the process is in your office, it has to be very clear in this handoff what happens. But also it verifies with the patient that we're posting the right procedures. All right. Now, front office people, you have to realize this also saves you from, at the end of the day, realizing that something didn't work out between what the patient was scheduled for and what we've charged out at the end of the day. All right. So step number 4 is to make sure that we have a very good handoff that verifies the information that we see in the walkout. All right. Then front office, we're going to use the plan service, step 5. We use the plan services to enter them into our walkout. And now we've got an exam in the evaluation and the professional cleaning in the walkout. All right. Now, if anybody wants to unmute your mic, if you would, I've got a question for you. All right. Where on my screen do you guys go to post a payment during this walkout? Anybody have an idea?
On the bar just below the services there, where it says add service, add treatment, add payment.
Awesome. You got it. And that's where we should be going. So where she described was right here, add payment. But what I see so many people doing is clicking this account payment button. Now, yes, it is an account payment, but the problem is this button here, add payment, is for payments made or adjustments made in the process of a walkout. If I have to add an adjustment, so doctor says, oh, give them, $5 off of their service, that is an adjustment made during the walkout. If the patient makes a payment today, that is a payment made in the middle of a walkout. This button down here, account payment, is, in my opinion, only for mail. The stuff that comes in the mail, we do through account payment. Everything else that's done at the time of service gets posted here. And I'll tell you why in a minute. All right. So we're going to, instead of hitting account payment, all right, we're going to hit add payment. And this is, I wanted to show you this. This report, your day sheet, is affected in so many ways by those two differences, the difference between the account payment and the add payment. And I'll show you where. So if I look at the number of patients seen, a couple things. If you, and this is something we've talked about in the field guide a few times. All right. If you are walking out a broken appointment charge, all right. So Aaron doesn't show up for his appointment today. And then, so we post a charge in the account for Aaron for $50 for a broken appointment. We just add, the ADA code for broken appointment. We post that charge. It's going to have listed down here, one patient was seen today, Aaron, even though he wasn't seen, but he had a charge posted, so he was seen. So do you see how that affects the numbers that we see on a daily basis? It's not the proper way to break an appointment and add a charge in Eaglesoft. All right, so that's one thing. All right, look at this one. All right, total walkouts. All right, how much did we collect today in walkouts? Well, if it's not done through add payment and done through an account payment, it's not going to show that this was money collected during a walkout process. So if you're looking at your walkout ratio, payments made during walkouts, it's not going to show as people paying. So I just did an evaluation of a practice for a consultant out there. And according to this office, if I looked at the numbers, it looks like nobody in the office ever paid at the time of service because everybody was posting as account payments instead of add payments. So that's why it's important that you look at these reports and see how it's affecting your numbers. All right. So this entire box down here at the bottom of your day sheet is determined by the way that you do walkouts, and it's huge. So just be aware that there's so much more than it's affected. So if I hit add payment, I get to choose my payment type. I get to put the amount in there, and then I can apply this to the walkout. So hopefully that made sense. Let's do. All right. So now, as the patient's leaving, all right, and we're working on the next step of this, I want to talk about this, the route sheet, because this comes up all the time as part of going chartless. And everybody is always fighting me on this about, I love my route sheets. I need my route sheets. Route sheets are the backbone of my practice. I got to have my route sheet. I got to have my route sheet. All right. Whatever you tell me about, you have to have your route sheet. I could probably give you 100 reasons why you don't need a route sheet. All right. And now as we go through this COVID crisis, we don't want the paper in the operatory and coming up to the front desk. So just as an example, let's look at this route sheet. All right. And let's find out here. And you can see, I've got so many jokes about route sheets. I just went through the field guide last night and I just copied and pasted some of the things that I had posted about route sheets. All right. I just think route sheets are just like the bane of my existence, because everybody who tells me they need them, I can tell you 5 different ways why you don't need them. All right. And a lot of it is because a lot of offices use route sheets as like that safety blanket. And I keep telling them that you don't need a route sheet. There are so many ways to get around having a route sheet. All right. And that's the other one I had up there, my Saint Rowdy. All right. Patron saint of practice management. So here's what I will tell you. Is people say what I do is I gather all of my route sheets, and at the end of the day, I go through the route sheets and I compare those route sheets to my production reconciliation report. And I go, oh, I like that. That's a great idea. So you compare these paper sheets to another piece of paper. That's great. So kind of like your bank statement, you're looking at the checks that came in and you're going to compare those checks that came in to the bank statement, which is a fantastic idea. But what do you do when there's a reconciliation problem? All right. What happens when you get that route sheet and it says exams, 2 bite wings and prophy, and then when you look on your route sheet, I mean, on your production reconciliation report, and you see that person had 4 bite wings? All right. Why is it that, how can you reconcile the two? The only way you can reconcile it is to fix one thing or the other. Either delete the services that were posted into the computer or go back to the hygienist and say, hey, you posted 2 bite wings when you should have posted 4 bite wings. But that's not reconciliation. That's training. And if you can get that person trained so they're posting the right information, then we don't have to do this reconciliation. If you're doing it the way I did it, where the person is telling me what procedures they did, I am looking at my my screen to show selected services, and we've reconciled that ahead of time. So all I need to do now is just post my services. At the end of the day, it should be correct because I've confirmed that as we did the posting, and now I can move forward. All right. So there's not a reason in the world why I would ever use a route sheet. So here's some of the other things that I hear. Well, I need to see that the patient has Blue Shield. Well, I can see that right on my schedule. And I can see that in my operatory. All right. Well, I need to see that that person has an outstanding balance. Well, I can see that on my schedule, and I can see that in the operatory if I need to. Well, I need to see that the patient has low benefits. Okay, I can see that in my operatory. I can see that on my schedule. All right. I need to see that that person's preferred doctor is Dr. Smith. Well, I can see that on my schedule, and I can see that in my operatory. Or that patient has a special alert because they bring in a seeing eye dog. Well, I can see that on my schedule or see that on my operatory. So there isn't a reason that you can tell me that you need this piece of paper chairside. And if the reason that you need it chairside is because you want to write notes on it, that's not a great experience. I mean, not a great reason, because if you're using it to write notes on, well, in this world of cross-contamination, that's a whole different problem. So whatever you tell me is your issue, we can find ways to fix that issue. All right. If it's family appointment information, it's whatever you see on that route sheet that you need, there is a way around using the route sheet. And each office is going to have different needs. Some people only print this off in order to be able to have some sort of communication tool. All right. But that's what Post-its are made for. So we can come up with a better way of doing that. All right. So let's talk about the alerts that you just saw. There are different types of alerts that you can see on your schedule and see in the operatory. The first one are patient alerts, or what I call personal alerts. All right. So if you look down the side of this patient, the red one lets me know that there's 2 people who have the name Richard Smith. Richard Smith is wheelchair bound. Richard Smith, believe it or not, only speaks Mandarin. All right. Richard Smith breaks lots of appointments. So I can see that immediately based on what I can see on those icons. All right. From a medical history alert. So anything that's on the medical history, we can tie to an icon. So we have latex allergies. We have that the patient's on a bisphosphonate. We have that the patient had a joint replacement. And we have that the patient is a tobacco user. All right. So I can quickly see that on my schedule or in the operatory And then when it comes to IntelliCare alerts are if this, then that. So if the patient hasn't had bite wings in more than 12 months, I get an icon. If the patient has a balance over X, I can see it. If the patient has less than $100 left on their benefits, I can see that. If the patient has Delta Dental, I can see that. So all of these things can immediately show up on your schedule and or the operatory. So we really don't need that information on a piece of paper someplace. As somebody wrote a comment back about route sheets that the only people who know the information on the route sheet is the person holding it. So it's really not that great of a tool, where this is universal. All right. And just my little warning that you can only get up to 10 icons. I know I'm showing a lot more. I'm showing 12 of them on there. And the other thing is IntelliCares, if not used properly, can really slow down your system. So we've got to pick and choose how we see these things, where they're going to be. Obviously, I'm not going to have that they're a smoker on the schedule. That's something I would have in the operatory. So we just have to pick and choose how we're going to do these things. But we can see a lot of the good stuff that we want to see. All right. Easiest one to set up, and this is one that I show all the time, how to set up one for bite wings. So under list and IntelliCare, we're going to do a new one based on services. And then we're going to add the full series, 2 bite wings and 4 bite wings. We're going to say it's due every 12 months and a day. And then we're going to go searching for a green tooth icon and it literally is listed. If you hit browse, it's literally listed as green tooth. And I say, show that on my appointment screen, and then use that in the clinical virtual screen too. So again, we can pick and choose how we show these things. And if you say we only do bite wings every 18 months, you change it to that. You say we only do that on patients over 5 years old. You can do that based on age. So you can have just about any kind of setup you want based on the IntelliCare. All right. Now, another question that came in on this was membership plans. Can you do membership plans in Eaglesoft, and how can you control those? So I have down here 4 different types of membership plans. All right. There is Clear, there's Boom Cloud, there's Illumitrack, and then there's ones that you set up yourself. And that's why I just have it with the line through it. I can tell you now, I know nothing about Boom Cloud and Illumitrack. Aaron can probably help you with Illumitrack. It's way outside my area of expertise, but I will tell you, I actually wrote the book for Clear on how to integrate Clear into Eaglesoft. So I know how Clear works. Well, I know how Clear works when it relates to how you get it in Eaglesoft. But Clear, Boom Cloud, and Illumitrack pretty much work the same. So the same how-to manual could probably work for all 3 of those. So if you need help with that, what I want to talk about is if you don't use one of those services, or if you do, how I would set them up in the office without using an outside service. So I call those a custom membership plan. The way I set them up is I actually have 3 different plans set up in my Eaglesoft database, and we can look at them when we get to the live demo. All right. So I have a silver plan, a gold plan, and a platinum plan. All right. And I only call them that for the sake of this discussion. All right. My gold plan is just my basic plan. I mean, I just call it gold because it sounds good. All right. And that would be whatever you want to charge for it. All right. I usually say it's whatever you get for a comp exam plus a recall visit. All right. The total of those 2 things should be about what your plan should cost. And that should include 2 checkups and then a discount on all the other services. So like 10, 15%, whatever you guys want to make it. All right. All right. So that is my typical plan. All right. And then obviously it's less for the other kids in the family, but it's $299 for the first person, say $199 for the next person, whatever you guys want to do. That's something you choose to do inside the office. All right. My platinum plan is the same exact plan, but includes 3 visits. So really that's my perio plan. So it includes 3 visits a year. All right. Nothing different than the gold plan other than it includes another visit per year. All right. And then my last plan is a silver plan. All right. And we have so many patients in our practices who, we don't mind giving a senior discount, or we don't mind something like, whatever we want to give them some sort of discount. We put them into our silver plan, and they get from 5 to 15% off, depending on how you guys want to structure it, but they pay for their recall visits. So there's no visits for free, no x-rays or anything like that for free. They just get a discount across the board, but they've signed up as a member of the plan. All right. And guess what? They have to follow the rules of the plan. So I'm going to show you what those rules kind of look like. So this is just a template for one of the brochures in one of the offices I work with. All right. And some of the rules are that going 30 days without having a recall visit, you void your plan. So if a patient goes 30 days without, if they were scheduled for March 1st and now it's April 1st, guess what? They lose their plan. Well, we allow for what's happening with COVID, but you understand what I mean. So if they were due back in July and they didn't come in until August, they could lose their plan. All right. The other part of it is cancellations of 3 appointments or more, they lose their plan. All right. So this is a great tool. And a lot of people who've made these plans in their offices don't have any sort of loopholes, which means people could get discounts even if they don't follow your instructions. But in my office, I use these as tools because if somebody calls and says, hey, I want to, I have to cancel my appointment, I can always say, well, you realize if you go a little, you're pretty far out, you could lose all the benefits of your plan. So now I have a loophole to make sure I can get them back in. So if anybody needs this info, I can make sure that I can send it to you, but you'll also have this video to go back to. Now let's talk about employers, because that was something else that somebody asked about to cover. And again, we're going to go back through this live in Eaglesoft as soon as we get done with the PowerPoint. All right. I see this in offices all the time, and people have the employer listed as retired. Well, I'm retired, but I work for, or I'm retired from the crew process. So my plan, if I came to your office, would be listed under the crew process LLC, not retired, the crew process LLC retirees, because the other people who worked for me, they have their own plan. It's called the crew process. So it should never be listed as retired. All right. Now, GM retirees, perfect. It's listed under G for GM retirees. All right. US government, retired, perfect. All right. Conseco construction, retired. So, all right, GMs are listed under G, US govs are listed under U, and Conseco construction is listed under C. Quick to see because we can see the regular employees and the retirees all within the same view that we're looking at. All we have to do is type in GM and we can see all our GM employees, management, workers, retirees, et cetera, right on one screen. And we can see based on the group numbers on the right side of that, what group number they're in. So let's take that to the next level and let's dig deeper into the way that we name these employers. All right. When I name an employer, I take the name of the company and I start adding things to the end of it, like this. So immediately when I look at this employer, I can tell that I need to have a patient ID number in order to submit a claim. That's a PID. I need a patient ID number in order to submit a claim. All right. So if the patient comes in and all they have is their social, okay, I can either look up their ID number or I can put the social in the ID field. So at least I have an ID number in that field. Otherwise, the claim's not going to go through. All right. The next one lets me know that there's no assignment of benefit. So if somebody comes in from Conseco Construction, I immediately know that I need to collect the full amount because there is no assignment of benefit. The check's going to go to the patient. The next one lets me know that there's no real-time eligibility available. So I can quickly look at this screen and without having to read through any notes or anything else, I know immediately by looking at this, there is no real-time eligibility available for this employer. All right. And then the last one lets me know that the benefits were last checked in February of 2019. Well, isn't it time to update the benefits for this patient? I think so. So if I saw any employer who didn't have a January of 2020 verification, I'm going to make sure I'm updating it. And I will tell you guys, there are a lot of people who lost their benefits during this crisis. You better double check verification of benefits. All right. If you're using real-time eligibility, try that. If you have to call, try that. But you're going to get a lot of denials in the next few weeks of patients who their coverage was canceled because their employment status changed. So be very, very aware that this is going to be a big deal in the next few weeks. So that's how I break down my employer. And you guys, you can pick and choose how you want to list these things, but it's really important that you have some sort of, postscript after every single employer so you can tell what's going on. The most important one up there is benefits last verified. All right. So now let's dig deeper and let's look at what the actual employer screen looks like. All right. And I'm going to have you guys unmute your mics for a second because I want to ask you a question. All right. The most important item on this screen, most important item on the employer screen section of this screen, what do you guys think is the most important section of this entire screen? Let me know.
The fee schedule?
Good. That's not it. Anybody else?
The name? Insurance.
Nope. Anybody else?
Group
Did
number.
anybody say fee schedule?
Yep, somebody said fee schedule. That's not it.
Oh, okay.
All right,
Group
I stumped
number?
you.
The note section.
Active.
Nope. Because I'll tell you right now, and you guys can mute yourselves, because here's the thing. I will tell you right now that your fee schedule doesn't really matter. You're still going to get paid. All right. And it doesn't really matter because the calculations could still be off. If you've got the wrong fee schedule in, it could still be off. All right. And group number doesn't mean anything because a lot of, I can tell you that 90% of the Delta group numbers that you have in the system are incorrect, because if you got them off of the Delta ID cards, it's different than what they actually come back on the EOBs. And the EOB is the actual group number. So 90% of the time, Delta group numbers in Eaglesoft are incorrect in the offices I go to. So, and again, this is my opinion, but I think the most important part of this entire section is service types. Because no matter what you do, if you've got the proper fee schedule in, all right, if you've got the proper group number in, you have the proper deductible in, the proper maximums in, the proper name in. If you get two patients who come into the office, I'm sorry, a family who comes in, and two of the kids who come in, one's 15 and one's 13, and you post fluoride for those kids, all right, they're both 90% of the time going to show up as 100% covered for fluoride. The 15-year-old we know typically is not covered for fluoride, and the 13-year-old typically is covered for fluoride. So immediately, one thing like that can throw off an entire balance, because now it's going to say the patient had, let's just say that all they had was fluoride. So, $50 for the fluoride. And it's going to say the balance for these two kids, because they just came in to have fluoride done, balance is $100, $50 each. Estimated insurance, $100. Balance due, $0. Now, what you could do is you can say, Mom, we know that the 15-year-old typically doesn't have coverage for fluoride, so you have to pay us the $50. Ignore the fact that it says it's 100% covered, because our system really doesn't work well. So go ahead and give us $50. So Mom gives you $50, and now you have a credit balance on the account. And it's a weird thing because it says there's $100 out to insurance. The balance is $100, but the patient just paid you $50. So now we have a weird balance on the account. And that all could have been fixed by having a service type connected to fluoride for having preventive services that are non-covered. Now, how do you get that done? Everybody typically calls insurance companies, and there's a whole section in the Facebook group about verification forms. Everybody has verification forms, and I just grabbed one out of the Facebook group. So here's a verification form, and we get on the phone with the insurance company, and we mark down all of these areas of coverage, and we mark down frequency limits, and we mark down percentages, breakdowns, and all this kind of stuff. And the problem is there is no place in Eaglesoft to put that, except for if you guys have followed my methods of setting up service types that match what you have on a verification form. So you can see I don't just have basic preventive prosthodontics. I've got mine split out to the nth degree, because I want to see I've got 4 categories under preventative. So I have preventative non-covered services. All right. I have sealants on molars. I have sealants on premolars. All right. Because these are the different things that I've seen over the years. So in the same way, we've got on the verification form, we have 4910 over there, but over here under perio, we wouldn't have any place to put it other than under perio. So you can see I have a perio maintenance as a secondary category over here. All right. So that way, when my patients come in and I post fluoride for the 13-year-old, it goes one way, and for the 15-year-old, it goes another way. How do I do that? All right. I set up 2 codes. So one is a D1206 for my fluoride for under 14, and a A1206. Anything in my system that is an A would be an admin code. And you can see that the ADA code in the second column there is still the D, so that's what is going to go to insurance, but the service code, so internal to the office, the service code is an A1206 as opposed to a D1206. And I typically don't write child and adult. I usually write less than 14 and greater than 14 as my descriptions. But you can see under my service types that one is preventative and the other is preventive non-covered. So when I post the fluoride for the 15-year-old, it's going to show up as preventive non-covered, 0% coverage, and Mom's going to pay me the $50. All right. And my walkout statement is correct. My estimation insurance is correct. I don't have an issue. I move forward. All right. This is what it looks like in my setup. So my service code is A1206. The ADA code as printed on the insurance form, because we are still submitting this to insurance, is going to show up as 1206. All right. My description is the same except for the end of it where I would write less than or greater than 14. But my service type is preventive non-covered, which means it's going to show up as a 0 amount. All right. And the beauty of this is sometimes we find out that they do cover fluoride for adults, or they do cover the perio maintenance at 100% as opposed to 80%, as opposed to 50%. But we can get that granular because we got that information on that verification form that we call and got the information from insurance. Does that make sense?
Are you all set down, honey?
All right. Now, anybody want to mute their phone and tell me what that picture in the middle means? Anybody know what that means? Or who that is?
Cops at the talking, and I look back and I roll it, and it's heads, and there it goes.
Moby.
No. Good try. Nobody knows who that is. Wow, that's funny. That's REM.
PM.
Oh, you got it. Who was that?
Me, Shaheen.
Shaheen. Good, you got it. Okay, and what's their big hit?
Me in the corner.
Yeah, that's one of them.
Standing in the corner or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, but does anybody know their other big hit, which is what's the frequency? And that's the question I always get when people are trying to put information in for Eaglesoft. It's what's the frequency? How often can they have bite wings? How often can they have a full series? How often can they have a prophy? You know, so I always love having that one up there because everybody's always asking, what's the frequency? How often can somebody have something, and where do you store that information in Eaglesoft? Well, it's really simple, but not really. Eaglesoft's not going to track that for you. That's something the office has to do. My hope is that in the future, Eaglesoft will do this, and they'll actually track frequencies, and you'll get warnings based on those frequencies. But for the moment, we can't do that. So the way to track frequencies is through the notes. And what we need to do is we need to put notes into the notes field of the employer, not the patient, but the employer, to show what the frequencies are. All right. And inside that, here's my template. So prophies are covered at what percentage and how often they can have it. Fluoride is covered at what percent to what age. Bite wings are covered at what percentage, at what frequency. So this is exactly the kinds of notes that I put in my employer notes field. Night guard percentages, implants, are they covered? Do they downgrade posteriors? I just spelled that wrong. Is there a posterior downgrade? Are sealants covered? So that note goes in that note field. All right. And how do we see that as we're working with patients? Simple. How many times has somebody from the back office had to walk up to the front to say, hey, can Andre have a cleaning? You know, is he due for getting bite wings? How often can he have a full series? What's the exclusion on replacement of a crown? Well, it's simple because all we need to do is tell them that that same note field is already available in their chart right here on the right side where it says insurance. And all they do is click on the insurance button. All right. And what they get is a pop-up to break down all the insurance. And there in the blue is the frequency. The same thing you put into the employer screen will show up in blue down here, and you can scroll up and down to be able to see what's over there. But you can also see down at the bottom here the breakdown of coverage. So if doctor says, do they cover implant replacements? Do they cover this or that? All that information should be either in that box or down here. Are there outstanding claims for this patient? Well, sure, I can see those right there under claims. And how much are the remaining benefits? Well, we can see that right there. All right. So if we work on it this way, then there's less information that has to be transferred back and forth. We don't have to leave the operatory in order to get this information. Again, more and more important now that we go through this COVID crisis. All right. There shouldn't be anybody leaving an operatory during a procedure.
Quick question, Andre.
Sure,
Would
go.
you do the service year and versus calendar year in the notes as well, or is there a space for that?
Yeah, that's a good idea. You could. Yeah.
'Cause that's super important when they've, had to cancel and reschedule and whatnot.
That's a great idea. And again, each office is going to determine in that notes field what is going to be top of mind for everybody. Because again, sometimes people don't care about certain things. Like, like in our office, we could care less how often somebody could have a full series. It was a diagnostic tool for my provider. And he told us when he wanted to take an FMX, if it wasn't covered by insurance, so be it. He wanted it, we got it. So, we wouldn't charge a patient if it wasn't covered. But he took it when he took it, and he didn't care how often they could have it. It was up to him. It was a clinical decision and not a financial decision. But that's a great idea. Great idea. Who was that who asked me that question?
Sonia, thanks.
Thank you. That was a great one. Yeah. And make sure you're putting the answers to the questions in the priority that the clinical office is looking for. So let them help you build your template to put into the system. Good question. So let's go through questions. And what I'm going to do is I'll tab this out to my screen. And I'm going to go into Eaglesoft. So I'm going to stop my screen share, get everybody up there, and then I'm going to share out Eaglesoft. So questions, guys, you guys ask, and then I'm going to open up Eaglesoft and we can go through some real-time stuff. So what questions do you guys have for me?
I have a question on the note building that you had for the employers. How do you build your template?
Okay, so what I did is I just went right to, and I probably have it on my desktop. I just created a text file. So I just right-clicked on my desktop, said new text, and then I just made sort of like a template on my desktop. And then I go in there and I copy and paste it into the employer note field, and then fill in the blanks.
Okay,
So
great.
Yeah, because you can't make an auto note or anything like that. But if you just make a simple text, don't make it a Word document, but just make it a simple text file, then you can go back and forth between the text file and Eaglesoft. But if you make it a Word document, it's going to take a long time for it to open and all that other stuff. So just make it a simple text file.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Who else? And you guys should have the ability to unmute yourself if you need to.
How do you present treatment plans?
Okay. So two things. For one, and this is my personal opinion, and this is me working in thousands of practices, I don't ever use Eaglesoft as a tool to present treatment plans. I will create a treatment plan in Eaglesoft, but my treatment plans are written in a Word document with my logo at the top of it, with a real simple breakdown. I'm going to see if I can open it up over here. And I will send you actually in the Eaglesoft Field Guide, in the Files section, there is a copy of my treatment planning form. I know it's in there because I know I've referenced it a few times to people, but I will never, ever give a printed treatment plan from Eaglesoft to a patient. I think the treatment plan forms out of Eaglesoft look really bad, and this comes from a customer service person. Mine have my logo at the top of it. There's a lot more that the way it looks and feels. I just will never use the one that's in Eaglesoft. So, but mine is in Eaglesoft, and I think it's called the financial arrangement form. I'm seeing if oh, here it is, financial. I'm going to open mine up here and show you on my screen. Okay, minimize it in order to show my screen. Yeah.
Aaron, would you mind just putting yourself just as the only viewable individual?
Yeah, I could do that.
Oh, okay.
All right. Does everybody see my financial arrangement form there?
It's a little blurry, sir.
All right. Let me open up as big as I can get it. Let's zoom in. Window width. There you go. So hopefully everybody can see that. And really what I do is if anybody has bought a car, somebody sits the salesman will sit with you, and they'll use a scratch piece of paper to sort of write out the terms of the deal. So that's what I kind of do. I sit down with a patient, I write in my date, I write in my treatment plan. We're going to be doing implants to restore the upper right or whatever it is. I'm going to do that, a really short thing. And I'll finish that out with some notes about the summary of it. I'm going to type my total fee amount here. So it's going to cost you $10,000 to have this work done. All right. We expect that your insurance company is going to give you $1,000. All right. And as a preferred provider, we're going to knock off whatever amount, $1,500. All right. So your portion is $9,400. All right. And then down here, I say, do you want to pay with a check or cash or credit card, or do you want to go on a monthly payment plan? All right. That's just code for Care Credit or whatever else financing it is. All right. And then I do have a simple, convenient monthly payment plan, which is you pay me a third now, a third later. and I'm a third now, a third on prep, and then a third on insertion. So that's my payment plan. So if it's not care credit and you're not paying me cash, that's the only way you can do it for me. But this lays out the treatment plan in such a way that you can have this as a Word document. You can type it in as you want to, or you can freeform write it chairside with the patient or wherever you're doing your consult. But that's the way I do it. I use this as a cover page for, let me go here and let's go to, I'm going to share out Eaglesoft so you guys can see. I will only do, that piece of paper as my treatment plan. I'm never going to be doing a Eaglesoft treatment plan. I just think they look horrible. Sorry. Any other questions?
Andre, how
Yes.
can we make a report for a treatment history, like what we did ever for a patient, but without fees?
Without fees, it's going to be very
Without
difficult.
fees.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's darn near impossible because almost every report out of Eaglesoft is going to list fees. So, it depends on what the person, what they need it for. Like if you're transferring records to a patient, it depends. But there really isn't a good way. What I would suggest that you might have to do is actually take a report and save it as an Excel spreadsheet and then remove the fee column. There isn't an easy way to transfer information without actually having the fees on there.
Got
So
it. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's just so everybody knows, let me just do an account screen here. So almost every report that you generate for a patient, if I go to report here, I know they have an unsigned credit. Once I get to the preview screen, come on. All right, I have the ability to right click and save as, actually, I don't, it's up here. So I can actually export this document. If you don't have this, you can export it to an Excel spreadsheet, save it on your desktop, and then you can manipulate the information from that Excel spreadsheet if you know how to use Excel. But if you can't get the information you want just from the report you're looking at, you can always go into here. And you also wind up with some interesting things because there'll be some other columns that you can work with from that. So anybody who's working on some any kind of reports or data, I always suggest moving the information into Excel to do it that way. Good question. Anybody else?
Andre, quick question. So I'm not super familiar with this software. I worked with Open Dental and Dentrix, and I've never been formally trained, so forgive me for that. But
Okay.
I'm a hygienist again. The alerts, I don't understand why like if I have a patient that has asthma, I don't want that alert to pop up every single time, but I have to mark it in the medical history, right?
Yep.
How can I tweak that? I mean, I know with like the other ones, there's pop-ups and flags, and I can put requires neck pillow or has vertigo, cannot be reclined, whatever. I can't seem to figure out. I mean, I know how to add an alert, but I'm having trouble with that.
And you really can't. So here's the deal. If you're using the standard medical history form, so list medical history form, all right, anything that you check off on that medical history form is automatically set up to create a medical history alert, that pop-up that you have. All right. So let me just show you under list, general setup, and medical history alerts. This is where those alerts that you're talking about, like asthma. All right. All those things, see all the things in red? They're
Yes.
automatically going to have a pop-up. All right. You see where it says warn user? That means pop-up. All right. Unless you're going to create custom medical history forms, which is what I have, custom medical history forms that are attached to custom alerts, you're always going to get pop-ups.
Okay, how do we do that? Because
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of that medical history form because the
Good.
ones that pop up are not a necessity.
Under medical history forms, all right, you can take the existing form and edit it, and it's going to say you can't edit it, but you can create a new one based on that one. And you can see I've customized my form. And it's not going to let me edit it, but let me just show you if I look at my forms. Okay, So I've actually gone through and customized my form so that I have questions. So I got rid of that disclaimer at the top of it that says, you agree that this information is correct, because the disclaimer is also at the bottom. So it doesn't need to be at the top. All right. So I've gotten rid of that to make some space, and I've combined some of the questions. So instead of saying, are you seeing a physician? Have you been recently hospitalized? Do you have a neck injury? I have it as one question. All right. Because if they're under a physician's care, currently under a physician's care, I don't care if they have a physician. We know they have a physician. If they're currently under physician's care, been recently hospital, or had a neck injury, and they click yes, I'm going to ask them questions. All right. Same thing. Are you taking any meds? All right. Typically, we have this little one-liner, so there's no place to really write anything. But if you see my form, you'll see how much easier it is. So you can go through and customize it. And I actually have a whole section in the Eaglesoft field guide of how to customize it based on the way that I have mine set up. So you can see right here, recently hospitalized, yes. And then I got a whole space to write it. Taking any meds, I got a whole space to write it in here. All right. Did you take bisphosphonates? Right there. Pregnant, nursing, contraceptives. And then I've gotten rid of a lot of those questions that I don't want on here. All right. So I've gotten down to just the things that I want. I call it the BAM, the bare ass minimum. All right. And then comment boxes. All right. So you can recreate this form. And at the same time you recreate the form. So you mentioned asthma. I can take where's asthma? I hate that these are not in alphabetical order. You can actually find the one you want, asthma. And I can't do it because it's, all right. But I can actually go into settings here and find a way so it doesn't pop up. So I'll give you an example. Instead of just general cancer, I created a medical history alert called breast cancer. All right. And I have that set up with a breast cancer ribbon, and I have it show up in my clinical screen, but it doesn't show up on my schedule, and it doesn't pop up to warn me. So I can see that, but I don't need to see it on my schedule, and I want to see it on my clinical op. And I could do the same thing with asthma. Where's that? Asthma. So I could do a new asthma. Don't warn me. Browse. All right. And I have all my icons, or a lot of my icons, in the Facebook group. And I can find a asthma inhaler, and I can say, show that in my clinical operatory, but don't warn me, and don't put it on my schedule. I just want to see it there. So now I have a custom medical history alert that now when I create my new custom medical history form, I can tie as this asthma and not that one to my medical history form. So now I get the symbol, but I don't get the pop-up.
Perfect. Yeah, it's like when they've got basal cell skin cancer and it pops up cancer every time, and I just don't want that.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. And my goal is that when everybody, and this is going to be screwed up a little bit because we're in the, you're looking at my screen through it, but see all my icons down here? I want to be able to look there and tell everything I need to know about a patient without having to go read a medical history form. All right. And hopefully this will reset so you guys can see it. All right. So hopefully you guys can see this. So I can see right here, this patient has a hearing problem. They're overdue for bite wings. They're overdue for a full series. There's a private memo I should read. All right. They have Blue Shield. They're on a 3-month recall. All right. They are overdue for their prophy. All right. They have a treatment plan that's over $1,000. They have referred services that are outstanding, and their benefits have not been verified. So that's how quick and easy it is for me to see the same alerts that you're talking about, but without having to do a whole lot of notes. And I don't have any pop-ups. I have just a few pop-ups. Anybody else have a question? And Aaron, if you're watching the chat box, I can't see it. I'm going to open it up over here, see if I can see chats.
Andre, do you have a icon for blood thinners?
Yes, I do. And let me just show you under, I've got to go back to my front office to do that. So I have a few of them. I might not have them set up here. So under my patient alerts, and I don't have it set up here. So let's just do a new one. And again, this depends on if you have it as part of your medical history form, or if you have it as part of your just patient alerts. So And I always do all of my all of my patient alerts I have systematically put in my thing. So I have taking, all right. And I would put taking, all right, because I've gone in offices and I see people have Coumadin, warfarin, Lobodox, and all these blood thinners in there. So I just put a generic taking blood thinner, and I want to be warned if they're doing that. And I browse, and I have under B, blood thinner. So there's my blood thinner. And if you want that icon, let me know. Send me a message, and I'll send that to you. And then I want to see that on my schedule because I do want to see that they have that, and I do want to see that in my clinical screen. So that's how I would set that up. And then I have another one that says no longer taking blood thinners, and then has the same symbol with a line through it. And then if somebody had hemophilia, there's the same symbol without the RX on it.
Thank you.
You got it. Anybody else?
How do you add those icons to your list?
Okay, easy. I'll show you real fast how to do that. And I'm going to open up a window over here. So hopefully you guys can see. So all I do is go to Google. I go to Google Images, and I go blood drops. PNG. All right, PNG file is usually a file that's, pretty clear. Oof. All right, so there's a blood drop, or there's a blood drop. All right, or there's a blood drop. All right, so all I'm going to do is take this blood drop and save image as, and I'm going to save it on my desktop. All right, it's easier if you do BMP, which is a bitmap file. All right, but bitmap files are kind of hard to find nowadays. But if you find one, great, but I doubt you will. So I always look for PNG files. So save the image. I'm going to save it as a JPEG. I'm going to save it on my desktop. And then there it is on my desktop. I'm going to actually edit it. All right, and I know this is kind of a crude way to do it, but I'm going to resize it, and it has to be in pixels 32 by 32 in order to be an icon in Eaglesoft. So see how tiny it is? And then you have to file, save as, bitmap file, bitmap picture. All right, I know I'm doing this fast, but you can always play back the video. And it's got to go inside your Eaglesoft folder. So C, Eaglesoft, shared, indicators, and these are all my indicators. And now you can give it a name like blood drop or whatever you want to call it. And then you can save it into Eaglesoft. So you can make any picture you want into, a file. So no matter what, you can make it an icon. So even if it's, like if you have a membership plan for your office and you want to call it the Fantastic Smiles membership plan, and you want to take your logo and make your logo the icon for it, you can certainly do that. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You got it. Anybody else? You got me, so ask away.
How will we be able to replay this later on?
So when we're done, it takes a couple hours for this to render. So I'm going to render it, and I'm going to put it onto my YouTube channel. And once it's on the YouTube channel, it'll be available to anybody can see it. But I'll put a link in the Facebook group. But FYI, if you guys go to YouTube, if you have a Gmail account, it's easier. But if you go to YouTube and you just type in Andre Shirdan, search for me, come right up there at the top. And that's my YouTube channel. And all the videos are there.
If you've ever seen me speak, have done any of the training I have on front office.
And all the videos are under videos, and any possible thing you could think of is listed there. So those are the videos that we've created so far, and there are more to come, and this will be out there too, but there will be a link in the Facebook group to it.
Andre, do we have on your Facebook group a file with auto notes for front desk or like insurance coordinator?
Yep.
Like
so
samples, not how to do it, like samples, you know?
Yep. I think it's under admin notes. And everybody's always asking me, how do I find things so fast in the group? I do the same thing. It's just like a Google search to me. They were under admin notes. I thought I had them in here. And if not, under the file section, it might be there. But I'm almost positive I had it, and it was just listed as admin notes, but I can't remember where I put them. But if they're not in there, I'll make sure that I get them in there. There's my auto notes for restorative. But if they're not there, I will make sure as admin codes. So maybe I don't have them there.
Yeah, I tried to search. I couldn't find them.
All right. I am making myself a note to do this. As soon as we get off the call, I will make sure I put my admin notes on there. Admin notes.
Thank you so much. And by the way, I just wanted to say I have now your both books in e-version. They are so good. Like, this is the best thing I have ever had regarding my job, you know?
Awesome. And it's, if everybody doesn't know what you're talking about. So I wrote a book about all the progress notes that I've ever done. Let's see. There it is. So I wrote a book on progress notes, and it was due to come out April 1st. And with everything that happened with the crisis, I said, I am not going to sell this thing. I mean, you know, the editors and publishers were giving me pricing on how to, how to put it out for everybody to buy. And I never wanted it to be anything other than an ebook, because my feeling is once you buy this book, it's old. So what I wanted it to be is something that you could buy, and then anytime I updated it, automatically you got the information. So all you have to do, so if you bought the book before the COVID crisis broke out, I just updated it. So now some of the notes actually have some of the COVID-19 progress note information in there. So it's available. It's on thegroupprocess.com/notes. But the way that I made the book available, instead of selling it, it is something where all you do is, if you want to, it's like subscribing to PBS, public broadcasting. If you want to donate $10, you get the book. If you want to, if you want to donate $10, you get this book. If you want to donate $50, you get the book, plus you get me for an hour to ask me questions. So depending on how you want to use it, you can use it, and it's out there for you. But it's all of the progress notes that I have for restorative and for hygiene, but my admin notes are not in there. So I have to make sure I get you those. I will post it. Anybody else?
Yeah, I highly recommend. And it comes with another book, by the way, right? With your another ebook. Yeah, so I highly recommend it for everybody to do it, because it's really very helpful. And thank you again for doing this. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm glad you have it. Thank you for being a patron. Anybody else have a question?
I have a question.
Go.
So I recently took over an office, and what I've noticed is that their recall, or our recall, is just ridiculous. We have a lot of inactive patients who still have recalls in there. Is there a way to do like a mass deletion of those recalls of inactive patients?
No. So here's the problem, and I'm glad you brought that up, because here's the thing. It's garbage in, garbage out. The problem is, if the patients aren't inactivated properly, then you're always going to have this as an issue. So there really isn't a good way other than to go in and inactivate those patients. You're going to have to go through the process of cleaning up your database in order to be able to get good activation, good reactivation. So there is no good way. I wish I had a better way. It's just that, Eaglesoft is casting a net, and those fish are so big that they're getting caught in the net. They're not small enough that they fall through. So there's no easy way unless you're going to do reactivation through some other means, by like running a report of people who were here 6 months ago and then now they're due for a recall. So you could do it that way instead of doing just anybody who's due for a cleaning, they should come in. So, you know, there's no easy way because the problem is your database is dirty. So you're getting dirty results.
So if the patient is already marked inactive, but their recall is still active,
Okay.
when we're looking at the number of active patients, would those recalls and the inactive patients play a role in it at all, or no?
It could, because if you inactivate somebody without removing them from recalls, they could still be on there.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen deceased people be recalled, you know.
Yeah, I
Not
have
they'll
quite a
show
few
up.
of those.
Yeah, not that they'll show up, but you know, that's what happens, you know. And what I tell people all the time is when you take a person in Eaglesoft and you go to inactivate them, there's a process that you have to go through. Under preferences, let me move this over here. Under preferences, we want to remove them from recall. We want to remove them from active. All right. And I don't want to do this on this patient, but remove them from active, remove them from recalls. All right. And then we want to also take their insurance off. All right. And I can't do it on this person because it's connected, but take their insurance off, because God forbid we try to, I mean, imagine they work at Radio Shack and now Radio Shack is out of business and we're trying to get rid of Radio Shack, but we can't because it's connected to Hank, who's inactive. So you go through the process of taking all that other stuff out. The last step of this is if we find somebody is deceased, we go through the same process of taking them off recalls, taking them off active, removing their insurance, but also if you take out their phone number and their address, there's no way to actually get in touch with them. So even if they wind up on a reactivation list, there's no way to email them, there's no way to call them, there's no way to, so they can't get reactivated. And that way you avoid that situation where dead Bob's widow gets a recall card for Bob. So anytime you find out somebody is deceased, you really need to go through the process of removing them from recall, making them inactive, taking their insurance off, and getting rid of any kind of contact information from them. So it's a process, but that's the only way to get the database clean.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Andre?
Yes, go.
On statements, is there, you know, when you're running the statement wizards and you've picked a date that you're going to start with, you can always make the due date, you can change that for everybody.
Yep.
How can you make it so that the date you start, because you end up running statements and you have to rerun them because you've come up with 2 lines and I want to get more history, but I don't need everybody's all history. How can I make the date to start doing that
Further back?
Yeah, just like the back one is. Make
Well,
it on front.
I would be careful to do that because the problem is, and think about this, if you imagine I've been coming to your practice for years and I've always paid my co-payment, all right, and I've never gotten a statement, and I've been to your practice since 1985, whatever, all right, and then all of a sudden I say, you know what, I don't have my wallet, can you just send me a statement? And then you say, okay, send Andre a statement, and this is the first statement that I've gotten. It's going to give you every single item since 1985. So you have to be careful. What's that?
I don't want to do like that. If I was running statements right now that are going to go out at the end of May, and I've told the whole statement batch to start, say, the date maybe April 1st, but on a few of these, it'd be really nice if it started February 15th.
Yeah, but you're not going to be able to separate you're not going to say this person as opposed to that person. There's no if this, then that.
Well, it should be nice to be able to do that because you end up rerunning statements because they're not showing the amount of history, or you have to write down and make a note and go back in and do it singly and just
and see here's my thing on statements. I mean, and I've run thousands of practices. The way that I generate statements, which is daily, I have never, ever, and I'm saying that with my fingers crossed, had an issue with patients calling and saying, I don't understand how come this just says beginning balance. Because if I do daily statements, I always get the detail I want on everybody every time. But because I've always done it that way, I generate statements every single day for every single patient, for every single practice. And that way the detail goes out that they need. And if somebody 2 months from now who hasn't paid their bill, they're now in a 60, 90-day category and they haven't paid their bill and they're saying, I need more detail. Well, they got it on their first statement. And I understand because we're going through this shutdown and it might be a little different. But running statements every day for me means everybody's statement every single time is consistent. And that's because I run my statements every day.
Okay.
Yep. And there's a whole write-up on, my process for running statements. And that way I never have somebody who says, how come I just got this statement today? And it says that I'm, over 30 days. I've never got a statement before. Well, it never happens in my office.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. Aaron, how are we doing for time? If you got your mic open.
I think we're doing great still. I don't know when you wanted to wrap up. I have 19 people that are still viewing live on Facebook. It looks like we still got 43 people in house. I'd like to hear if there are any more questions, if you're still available for us.
I'm good until 2:00. So if anybody has any other questions, hit me and I'll give you another half hour or so.
Question regarding routing sleeps, Andre.
Go.
What's the best way for the front to communicate with the back about what the patient is accepting for that particular day? Let's say they have 4 fillings on the upper right, but they only have money to do 2 of them, and that they tell the front, well, I'll let the doctor decide which one to do.
Yeah. Well, and that's going to be a toughie because this is where I love the messenger system in Eaglesoft. And beyond the messenger, and again, I run a bunch of offices. A lot of the offices I work with are using headsets, and they're communicating that information that way. And then another way that we've eliminated route sheets. So I still think that the problem is we still have to have that handoff. And that's something that we need to work on a regular basis is how do we do this handoff and how do we let people know what's going on? Depending on the size of the practice, I love headsets, and they're a cheap way of doing it too. But to let somebody know, the problem is those things happen so fast. Somebody walks in and goes, oh, I don't know if I have enough money for all the stuff I was getting done. I just want to get 2 fillings. That's something that the front needs to tell the assistant who comes up to get the patient or however that process works in your office. So I would say, oh, Mrs. Smith says she only wants to get the stuff done on the right side today and wait till the left side. So I'm saying that across the patient, triangulating it. So the assistant hears it, the patient hears it, and then the assistant's going to tell the provider in the back the same thing. Patient told me today that they don't want to have the bite wings done or whatever that process is. But it has to be done, you can't worry about the paper, you can't worry about the computer doing it. It has to be done something where there's got to be a handoff, there's got to be a communication done so that everybody hears it. I don't know that there's anything in Eaglesoft that's going to fix that, because even if there's a notification that goes up on the chart or on the schedule or anything else, depending on the office, the provider might not see it. You send a message and the provider wasn't in the room when the message came in, and now it's timed out. So it's got to be a verbal handoff that happens. And I think that's the one thing that computers have been a nightmare, because people, we all see that on a daily basis. Oh, didn't you get my message? I text you that I wasn't going to come to dinner tonight. Well, no, I was cooking dinner, So we can't rely on the computer. It's got to be a voice-to-voice thing when it comes to things like that. We've got to work on that verbal handoff that happens. It's just something we got to do.
Would this be a valid use for routing sleeps?
To me, no, because again, if the route sheet, it's still people dependent. If I don't write it on the route sheet because I was on the phone, the patient was getting taken to the back, then the person taking the person to the back didn't see it. So what am I supposed to do? Get up from the front desk and run and write it on the sheet of paper? Well, maybe I wrote it before the doctor started prepping. So yeah, I still don't see the route sheet as the answer. I see the answer is people have got to talk. And that's...
Is there a way to prioritize treatment?
You can, but again, if patients scheduled for 18, 19, and 1 MOD, and even if it's listed as 1, 2, 3, doctor knows what was supposed to be done. Patient, typically when they get in the chair, aren't going to say anything. I never understand that. patients all of a sudden become mute when they get in the back and they don't tell you anything. So, doesn't matter unless somebody is physically saying, it's almost like what they do in hospitals, and I don't think we can do it in a dental office. They get the Sharpie out and they write on your right knee that's the knee that we're going to work on. They literally have that communication that happens and then they still do a check. They go, we're working on that knee, right? So there's going to be verbal communication that happens left or right. And the doctors still say, my friend's a orthopedic surgeon, so I hear this all the time. And he says to the nurse, we're working on the right knee, right? Or correct. So it's the same. I fly every day and the pilots still do the same thing. They still have a verbal check off, even though it's written on paper. They're going to count it out loud and then mark it on the paper. But the paper can't be the end all be all. I see it falling through the cracks all the time. And if nothing else, use a Post-it. Get yourself a little highlighted Post-it like this, and just write on there, only 18 DO today. And then you don't have to worry about a printed piece of paper, and stick that Post-it right on the bracket table or something. That makes it that's a better, if you can't physically walk in the operatory and communicate that or hand it off from employee to employee, use a Post-it. I'm okay with that. But that doesn't require that I've got to print a stack of route sheets for patients. So hopefully that makes sense. Anybody else?
Andre, in my treatment plan, screen, how do I default it so that it doesn't show all of the referred and completed?
In your treatment plan screen?
Yeah. So like in my treatment plan screen, whenever I go into it,
now we're talking about this. Are you seeing my screen? Are we talking about this treatment plan screen? Or are you talking about?
And if you go to the view all.
Yep.
How do I get it so that it doesn't show all of the completed?
Well, it's not going to. If you're going to say show all, it's going to show all.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that's why, so let me ask you a question. I'll ask this as a general question to everybody. When you create a treatment plan, under description, what are you making your descriptions? And what I see a lot of offices do, and I'd say 80% of the offices I go in, they're making the description the date that they created the plan. Which means, what's that?
I don't do that.
Perfect. Well, that's good. So now I could hit my drop down and I can see, here's my treatment plan for an extraction, bone graft, implant, custom abutment, crown. Or I could see my extraction, bone graft, partial denture, treatment plan. And I would see that here. So honestly, I've never used this view all unless I'm recalculating benefits. That's the only time I ever go to that view.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm always going under this view and then looking at the plan that I'm working on. So I mean, just for me, I've never really actually used this view. So this, it would never kind of bother me. But there's no way to filter out this information because you just told it to view all.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Actually, hold on. While I say that, hit show what? There you go.
Well, yeah, I do that, but I wanted to make it as like a default.
Yeah.
So I don't have to do that every time.
Nope, not an option.
No. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
But good question. Yeah, I never even thought to look at that because I've never done it that way. But good question.
I have a question from Facebook, Andre.
Yep, go.
This woman says, I'm a hygienist and recently heard that clinical staff should have back office on screen and not front office. We always work front office screen.
Yep. The back office should be here. All right. There's absolutely no reason for the back office to be on the front office screen. Because here's the beauty of this screen. I mean, it's literally a virtual operatory. And from this screen, I can see everything I need to see. I mean, the only thing that's not on the screen is the time clock. But I have my time clock on my toolbar, so that's the only thing it's lacking. But if the clinical office is not on this screen, then they don't get to see these indicators. They don't see the name of the person they're working on. They don't see any of this. Now, everybody's saying, well, I don't even typically have that screen up. I typically have my schedule up. Well, if you're working from the schedule, you're missing, again, my indicators, the patient's name, all that kind of stuff. So I have my schedule, but I minimize my schedule in between patients. I have my schedule up just to see where I'm going. You know, it's like, you know, again, I always use myself as an example. I'm in an airport, or I used to be in an airport almost every day. Well, I don't need to take a picture of this, all the arriving and departing flights. I just need to know where I need to go. Tell me where I need to go and I'll be there. But I don't need to see the schedule all day long. Just where I need to go. Who do I want to, you know, who's my next patient? I go to the schedule, I look at it, I close the schedule or minimize my schedule. So, but yeah, this is the screen that you guys should have, the clinical team should have up when you're working.
So I'm guilty of not using that clinical screen. I think most everyone in my office is. How do you get your icons to show up? I mean, you showed us how to create the icons and stuff, but how do they show up under the sync? Because we don't have any showing up.
Okay. So whenever we make a medical history alert or a patient alert, so I'm sure the office now has patient alerts. So whatever these alerts are, patient wants to have a pillow, you know, patient has a back problem. All right. Whatever that is, we get an icon and then we say right here, show on the clinical virtual screen. So take your existing existing alerts and find an icon that matches it and throw it on that virtual screen.
Okay, thanks.
You got it.
Andre, we do have a question from Vivian in the Zoom chat. If you want to take a look at that.
Yeah, let's see. An account that is inactive with a $2 credit shows on my AR. Why doesn't it show on the report for outstanding balances? It depends. So if you have a $2 credit and you're running your AR without showing credit, so if you do 1 penny to $9,999, it wouldn't show. The credit balance wouldn't show depending on how you're running your accounts receivable report. Now, if you're running your AR and that credit balance is there, could be a number of different things. It could be an unassigned credit, but the patient actually does have they have a $2 balance and they have a $2 credit, but those are not reconciled. So it seems like they have a $2 credit, but they don't. And if neither of those is true, then you've got a database corruption and you need to call the PTC and have them run a utility to fix that. So a lot of times, you know, systems will crash in the middle of a walkout or something like that, and you'll have some weird dangling database. If you have something weird happening like that, and this is what I always tell people, if you've got an error message or you have something weird happening in Eaglesoft, you need to call the PTC and have them actually clean up your database. I do it on a regular basis because I'm always messing with my database. There's something called a database validation that I run on a regular basis. And this is something that you have to really work with the PTC in order to get them to help you with. But I do this to do things like getting my recall dates back in line. You know, right here, update recall data, synchronize my dates with my appointments. So I run this on a regular basis. It's almost like if you had a deck of cards and you drop the deck of cards on the floor, well, all 52 cards are there, they're just out of order. So if you have the PTC work on this, they can actually run this database validation, or they can actually take your database and take it back to their to their center and work on it. But there may be some database corruptions happening if it's not one of the other two scenarios I gave you, where there's you're not running your AR showing credits, or if the patient has a credit and a debit, but the two things are not reconciled. So it could be a couple different things. So anybody else? Let's see. Aaron, is there anything else in the chat? Yeah. Oh, how do you apply unassigned credits when you have multiple dentists? Carefully. That's the answer to that question. So if you have unassigned credits and you have multiple dentists, all right, you're gonna have to be really careful. You're gonna have to actually open those unassigned credits up and look at the distribution to find out which provider they actually go to. Now, most of those unassigned credits are there because the walkouts weren't done properly, or patients prepaid and now we have unassigned credits. All right, if they're prepaying and you have unassigned credits, that's a whole different story. There's a whole section in the field guide about unassigned credits when it's prepayment. But what I would tell you is, if you have unassigned credits, you're going to need to actually go in and make sure that you have the rights to distribute a credit. So just so everybody knows, under security profiles, I'm gonna move that over here. Even as an administrator, if you think that you're an administrator, all right, you need to go into this admin section, go into financials, I think it is, and make sure that everything here is in green, because the ability to assign credits is not on by default. So you might be an admin and think that you have the ability to assign credits, and you might not be able to assign credits. So make sure that you go in here, and if you're an admin, you have the admin rights, make sure that everything on here is green under financial and under accounting. Make sure everything is green, because you could have set up where you can't assign a credit. And you might think you have God rights, but you don't. You're God with a small g. So you can't assign a credit. So you have to make sure that you go in here and make sure that you have full admin rights if you're an admin. All right. So that could be a problem. But again, when you're distributing unassigned credits and you have multiple providers, just take your time and do them one by one, looking at the entire balance. It's a tricky process, because you could have an associate who gets really mad at you if you're not assigning credits properly. But good question. We still have people coming into to the chat. So any other questions that you guys have? We got another 10 minutes before we have to wrap up. Aaron, if you see anything, you let me know.
Are your chats coming through on your Facebook side of things? Because my Zoom chat stopped chiming.
Well, yeah, no, here it looks like one just came in. It wasn't saying, oh, it was a thank you. But I'm not getting a pop-up if it happens, sorry.
Okay. I don't see any more questions, and Facebook, I don't have any more questions on.
All right, so guys, there's 36 people in the call now, the Zoom call now. We've got 10 minutes, so use it or lose it. So you got 10 minutes to throw a question at me if you have a question, or if you don't want to open up your mic and you want to send it to the chat. Aaron and I are reviewing the chat to see if anybody has questions there. But now is your chance. I'm sure what's going to happen. Yeah, go ahead.
Best way to clean up your database. We've been using Eaglesoft for about 10 years, I would say. And as we're learning more through, your stuff and, just reading upon it, we're just learning better ways of doing things.
Yep.
So what's the best way to clean up our old data?
So a couple things I would start with. The primary thing I would start with is click on your reports, go to patients without visits. All right, patients without visits. See this report? And I probably don't have anybody here. Oh, maybe I do. Okay, so see all these patients who came up who've never had a visit? That's kind of weird. How can you be a patient and never have a visit? So more than likely what happened is it's a dad who's either marked as a responsible party or as a policyholder, but not really a patient. So what I would do is go into each of those people and I would uncheck the fact that they are patients, and maybe they just are policyholders and responsible party. So I would clean that up. That list should be no more than 10 to 20 people, because there could be somebody who just called today. They made an appointment for the future, so they are a patient without a visit. So that list should be no more than 10 to 15 people, 10, 20 people tops, all right? So that's the first one, and that's the easiest one. Clean up your database so that we can see who's active and who's a real patient. The next step would be to go through my list and insurance company and start to clean up the insurance company list to get rid of the duplications. And what I always do is anything that's a duplicate, I write it as copy, and I put the copy way out there in the margin. There's a bunch of videos out there about how to clean up this employer list and insurance list. And the good ones, I put a plus sign after it to let me know that that's a positive, that's a good one. So I clean up my patients from the patients without visits, then I clean up my insurance company list, and then I go back and start to clean up my employer list. And my employer list, I clean up by going to list and employer. And then I always sort them by group number. So I start to look for duplications of group numbers. Like those two are exactly the same group. All right. So I can combine those down to one group. So somebody put in here crew process because I'm retired, but I really have AARP. So I would go in here and edit this as AARP duplicate or AARP copy. And then I would go to everybody who works for the crew process and move them into that AARP. And then eventually I could get rid of that AARP, even though that's admin one. But I know AARP goes through Delta. So it's a long process. And here's what I tell offices. If you're getting money, don't worry about it. Clean them up as you go. What you need to do is as you create new employers, the format we talked about today with cleaning up your employers as you go. So eventually when we get to 2021, if somebody doesn't have a 2020 date on their employer, then we know that's a bad employer and we either need to update it or clean it out and we can start to delete them. But the database don't worry about the database being bad. The database is as good as the database, but cleaning it up makes it easier for everybody. The big deal is, are you getting paid by the insurance companies and are you getting the right benefit breakdowns? And that's going to be something you have to do as you go through the day-to-day cleanup. So hopefully that makes sense. Aaron, I see there's 3 more chats here. Thank you. Can we get a copy of your custom medical history form and financial arrangement form and service types with non-covered procedures? Yes, you can. Those are all in the Facebook group except for the admin notes, but my medical history form is in there. If you just type in a search for custom medical history you'll see that. The financial form is there, and if it's not, I'll make sure I know that's there. The financial arrangement form is there. When you do your custom treatment plans, are you doing it with Eaglesoft? Yeah, I'm still doing our question was, because I write a custom treatment plan form, do I not use an Eaglesoft? Yes, I still write my plan in Eaglesoft in order to get the calculation of estimated insurance. But then I do basically a cover page with my custom treatment plan. So I put my custom treatment plan as a cover page to the Eaglesoft print off for the treatment plan. Because some people that you work with, you're going to work with some, you're going to do a treatment plan on somebody who's like an engineer, and they're going to want to see all the detail, all of the breakdown. And then all I do is just flip the page and show them the detail. But that's secondary to the page that I have on top that's kind of clean and neat looking. So, but yes, I still use Eaglesoft to get my calculations, and so that the treatment plan is in Eaglesoft so that I can pull from it for scheduling procedures and that kind of stuff. Does somebody have another question?
Is there any way you can assign a patient type to your patients? Let's say your practice, you're taking, HMOs and PPOs. So separating HMOs from PPOs when you want to run reports, so you can, when there's a hole in the schedule, you only want to call your PPO patients, let's say.
Yep. Well, there's a couple of different ways you can do that. And so, well, let's do it this way. So you can do, the problem is it's really going to depend a lot on, let's see, how much work you want to do to it. All right. So you could, under every person in the system, you can put in this box up here, this recall notes field. So like HMO, you could do this. And then as I create list of patients, and I always do my list through Money Finder, I can say, show me all my HMO patients. And there's my list. So you can utilize that recall notes field in order to be able to find something, but you can also trigger something like patients by insurance. But the problem is that's going to give you a list of people who have that thing and not people who don't have that thing. So it's hard to exclude a group. It's easier to find a group. The only other way is through account types, but that's gonna be really hard to get clean lists. So that's a toughie. For me, if I'm looking at patients and my recall is all kind of done, or like my quick fill list, that's kind of all done from my schedule. So I'll give you an idea. If I look at my schedule, I can quickly look at my schedule and I can see there's Delta, there's Blue Shield. All right. There's a Medicaid patient right there. So I can quickly look at my schedule, and if I'm pulling people forward or whatever, I can quickly look at this and tell what's going on just from my schedule if I'm doing it by insurance. Or if I'm looking at by this yellow thing right there, lets me know this patient got multiple broken appointments, so I'm not calling them. That person's got a red VIP, which means they haven't paid their bill. So I can quickly look at my schedule. There's a red VIP down there. So I can quickly look at my schedule and tell everything I need to know about the patients based on what's going on. This patient's on a 4-month recall. They're on a 3-month recall. So I set up all those indicators so I can look at this and be able to tell what's going on. If I had an opening and I'm looking at this person, they've got lab work that's back, I can call them and get them in. So I can tell just from my schedule what's going on with my patients without having to run reports.
Andre, but how to set up an IntelliCare for insurances? Like how to make it show?
Mm-hmm.
I have IntelliCares for different things, but I don't have for insurances.
So they are, an IntelliCare for insurance has to be custom written by the PTC. All right. And the problem with it is if you've got 12 Delta Dentals of Pennsylvania, the problem is they've got to have to write an IntelliCare that includes 12 different things on there. And you think about if you did one for Delta and you've got 300 Deltas, they've got to run a scenario where there's 300 Deltas that get picked up. The problem with that is IntelliCares can slow down your system when they're trying to cull through all your database. So the first thing you have to do is make sure you clean up all your insurance companies before you write that IntelliCare. And they can write a custom IntelliCare. You can see in my IntelliCares, I have custom IntelliCares written. These are all customs down here. So I have a custom IntelliCare for Medicaid. So if the patient has Medicaid, or if they have MetLife, or if they have Delta, or if they have Blue Shield, there can be a custom IntelliCare written that says, if this, then that. So if they have this insurance company, then I get my icon. And that can be, but it's custom written for each office because the way the database is set up. Delta is not Delta in the database. Delta is insurance company number 627 or whatever. So they have to actually write a custom database that says, if 627, then give me an icon. But because we might have 15 or 20 Deltas, Delta PA, Delta of Arkansas, Delta whatever, they can say, if 627 and 15 and 27 and 32 and 57 and whatever, then show me the icon. But it has to be written for each office because those numbers are never the same based on the office. But it can be done. As you can see, it can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So call PTC and they can do it. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. So Aaron, I saw a couple more questions. Let's answer those. If anybody, let's see.
Some of those might be coming to you personally, Andre, because I can just see everybody or anyone who's
okay.
Me. So I'm not seeing some of yours.
When you have an in and out of network with Medicare Advantage, how can you differentiate which one to see in both in and out? You can't. So when it comes to Are you guys there?
You still there, Andre?
Yeah. Hey, that was weird. Zoom crashed, but now it came back.
I think we're good. We're still on. You want to share your screen? We got a few people on our
yeah.
Facebook here.
That was weird. It dumped out. There we go.
Well, at least we know it jumps right back in.
That was good lesson. Okay. There was one chat that came in. I don't know if it got blasted out because of that weird thing. Yeah, the chat emptied. So I don't know what happened to it, but let's do this. well, it's not like I'm going anywhere. So here's the thing, guys. We're going to shut down this Zoom call, and I think Zoom is probably telling us to shut it down. I think that was why it shut out like that. But let's do this. If anybody has any questions, there you can either post it on in Aaron's live stream, or you can post it in the Facebook group. It's not like there aren't any questions in there. So, but thank you guys for hanging out with us today. And you know how to get in touch with me. You know how to get in touch with Aaron. And thanks for hanging out. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for your participation. Thanks for everything. And we will talk soon. So we're going to stop this and we'll end the meeting. Thanks, Aaron.
Hey, Andre, I really appreciate it. Thanks for the value you bring to these people.
My pleasure.
We'll talk to you later, sir. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.